Hey, welcome to Our Daily Bread. You know, that's the name of the show, of course, Our Daily Bread, but we've never done a program completely about bread. And I've got a great guy who's here today. He's called the Bread Man. Everybody probably knows him by that name better than by his name, Chet Fery. And he'll be joining us in the second segment and third segment of the show. But what can I make if he's making bread? Well, I'm going to make butter. Now, this is whipped cream. You see how it's starting to kind of get into curdling, into curds, I'm going to say. And it's going to change even into a yellow color. It's starting to get little lumpy things in it. It's not that smooth whipped cream you'd use on a dessert. And in a couple of minutes, it's going to release all of this liquid from it, and it'll be butter. Now, see all of this liquid in the bottom? That's actually that's buttermilk. That's what buttermilk is. It's the runoff from when you make butter. You get buttermilk. Now, why am I making butter? Well, I'm making butter for the bread. Why didn't I just buy a pound of butter? It'd be a lot easier, wouldn't it? But I wouldn't have anything to do for the next 5 minutes. But I also want to just show you how butter is made, or how it can be made. The Amish make butter still by the old churn method. And we've made this butter using obviously a handheld mixer. Now, another way to make butter, if you've got the patience, the time, and the arm strength, is to put a couple of cups of cream into a mason jar or another tightly sealed jar. And let me get my little gloves here. And I've been walking around for about 45 minutes shaking this jar. And what we're going to do is make some accompaniments to our bread today. Now, bread, of course, is very significant, obviously, in church. We use bread and wine, which become for us the body and blood of the Lord, taking after his command, his invitation, really, at the Last Supper to do this in memory of him. Now, we're making a different kind of bread today. What we're making is a bread that is going to be shared with people in a non-liturgical setting. Now, pour this butter. That's the buttermilk, okay? See? When you get your buttermilk, that separates from the fats, from the solids, and there you have buttermilk. Now, I never was a fan myself, but, you know, you live with those things, right? Now we've got our butter. All right. Again, it's kind of a lot of trouble to go through, but it's kind of a cool thing. And, you know, on a rainy afternoon or something, to do this with the kids would be fun. And we're going to make what we call compound butters. Basically, that just means putting together butter with other flavorings and using them. And you see, isn't that amazing how you got heavy cream, you whip it up, or you put it in a mason jar, and you shake it up for a long time, and it turns into butter. You see how beautifully creamy that is? It's very different. It has no salt in it, which you can add if you like. But what I'm going to put in here is a little bit of, one of them I'm going to do with a little bit of apricot in order to give our butter a great flavor for this fresh bread that Chet's going to be making in a few minutes. And I'm just going to kind of, keep pushing that. These are Apricot Preserves. I'm just going to put those in. And I want to kind of put that together. And I'm going to put a little dish like this. And there we have some apricot jam butter, which would be great on bread. Now, here's another thing that I'm going to do. I understand Chet made one of these too, and I'm going to also make one. I'm going to use a little bit of maple syrup. You can't open a jar of maple syrup if you've got gloves with butter on them, can you? No. So let's see where I go with this. I'll figure this out. Don't worry. Oh, there's butter all over the place. It really is a lot easier to just spend the $3 and get a pound of butter, right? But what fun would we have? All right. Here's New York State maple syrup. I'm going to make a little maple butter. And I'm going to put a little bit of cinnamon here. Some fresh grated plastic gloves. Fresh grated cinnamon with the maple. And for this, I'm just going to use a touch of salt to pull out the flavors of the butter and the maple and the cinnamon just a little bit here. Just a little pinchy pinch of this butter. And I'm going to cream this all together. Ooh, that looks good. This is really decadent, isn't it? This wonderful butter right from the cream. And, you know, we're all into this local stuff now. I mean, local and raw and organic. You can make your own butter at home. It's unbelievable to think that we would do that, but it could be a lot of fun. So there's some maple butter, and I'm going to pour the rest of that over that. Now, as I said, bread is so important to us in church, but it is also, in one form or another, bread is sustenance for the whole world. Whether it's made out of the wheat bread that we're commonly used to here, or it's made out of maybe some type of other grain, a rice or a cornbread or something along those lines. Now I'm going to make a savory dip also for our bread. I'm going to take some little bitty pieces of sun-dried tomatoes. I'm going to put those in here with oil, with vinegar. I see there's some thyme behind me. There's some garlic that's crushed here. There's some hot red pepper. The beautiful thing about this is you can be as creative as you'd like. You can use the things from your garden, the herbs if you have an herb garden, and just be creative and see how, you know, this is what they do in the fancy restaurants, you know. They just chop up little things, put them in a little jar, mix them up with some oil and vinegar, and then they charge you $8 for it, right? You can do these at home so much more easily, and it's a wonderful way to gather the family together for a little, like a rainy day project. Now, when Christ sat down at the Last Supper, he took bread, we believe unleavened bread. He shared it with disciples and said, "This is my body." And then as he broke the bread and shared it, it became for us a symbol, a sign, and a reality of Jesus Christ gathering us together. Let me get my olive oil open here. We want to use, for a bread dip, you want to use a good olive oil because the better the olive oil as a condiment, an extra virgin especially, it just has a nicer little aroma and flavor and taste to it. I'm going to put a drop in of vinegar just to get a little acid. And I'm going to put a little splotch of crushed garlic. How's that for a measurement? A splotch of crushed garlic in there. And I know I've got some herbs back here, so let me grab, I think these, this is thyme. I think this would be just great in our bread dip here. You know, bread, again, in scriptures plays a very important role. Jesus fed the 5,000 men on the hillside. And it was, they say men because it's not being inclusive, but they only counted the men in those days. So he fed the 5,000 men and the women and the children on the loaves and the fish, or the 3,000 on another hillside on another day. Bread was described by Jesus as sustenance for life, and he actually said that he himself is the bread of life come down from heaven. You probably know that song by Sister Tulin. You know, we sing it at almost every funeral now. I am the bread of life. You who come to me shall not hunger. You know that song? All of those verses are from the scriptures according to St. John, the Gospel of St. John. I'm going to kind of emulsify this. I want this to really go. Smells great with the tomatoes, the thyme. I'm going to put a little more oil in. I'm going to put a dash of salt in. And again, you don't have sun-dried tomatoes, use something else. If you just want it to be an herb sauce, that would be great too. And it's a great way to dip and break bread together. And that's what we really are talking about when we're talking about Mass and Eucharist and the sacramental uses of bread. We're talking about families coming together to share a meal. And when it's at Mass for Catholics, it's the most important meal we have. At the most important table we have, the table, the altar of the Lord. So, I've got some marmalade apricot butter. I've got some maple cinnamon butter. And I've got a little herb tomato dip. And now all we need is the bread. So come back in just a few minutes and we'll join Chet and we'll hear from the bread man how to make bread and what he does with all that bread he makes. Right after this. Welcome back to our Daily Bread. I'm Father Paul Seil, and we're having a great show today about bread. In the first segment, I made 2 types of butter. We call them compound butter. And then I made a savory dip with olive oil and vinegar and sun-dried tomatoes for the bread that is going to be created today by Chet Fery. Hi, Chet. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
But you're better known as the bread man,
They call me the bread man, yes.
Why do they call you the bread man?
Well, it's interesting. I was making bread and giving it away, and I was bringing bread to a soup supper at our church. And a group of college kids looked at me and said, "Oh, here comes the bread man." So that name, they actually gave me that name.
That's pretty cool.
It was
It
cool.
really is,
It was,
you know?
in fact, it was a hot peppery bread, by the way, which the college kids love.
Okay.
And I'll take that name any day.
Now you're an academic, though. You've had a career.
I
in
was a teacher, counselor, school administrator.
Okay.
Loved my work. Found that the most challenging kids were the ones I wanted to spend the most time with.
Now you actually live in central New York in the Rochester area now, but you grew up in Buffalo in Kaisertown.
I am a Kaisertown boy.
We used to be afraid of the Kaiser kids, we called them, the Kaisertown kids. We were told that they would hurt us if we went over into their neighborhood because I lived in South Buffalo, which was across the creek.
Well,
from
we
Kaisertown.
heard the same story about going to South Buffalo.
See how
but now we're
prejudice is
friends.
So sad.
We're
yeah,
all
yeah.
friends.
Well, we'll see how the bread is. Okay, so let's see. So
Okay.
you give, how much bread do you make and you give it away? Or?
I've been doing this for about 14 years. I do it as a hobby and I give it away. I've never sold a loaf. I estimate I've probably given away 45,000 loaves over the last 13, 14 years. I'm doing a very, very basic recipe. It's a recipe that means a lot to me. It's called Goodview Farms bread.
Goodview Farms.
Goodview Farms. And it was a farm my grandfather and dad owned back in the 50s. And it was a bread my mama used to make when she used to make it for the farm hands. This recipe is about 4 cups of dry ingredients, 3 cups of white unbleached flour, and 1 cup of whole wheat flour. It adds a little substance putting the whole wheat flour in.
Which is the whole wheat?
It's all in there mixed in.
Oh,
I
it's
mixed
mixed
it all
in.
together.
Okay.
I often teach people that you can be creative with those 4 cups. Put a little soy flour in, put a little rice flour, put a little rye flour, and the yeast is already in here too.
What do you mean the yeast? I mean, I know
Well, I
what you
use instant yeast, and I never.
it's
and
in
I
the
never.
little packet there?
No, I never
No?
pre-activate it. I already put it in.
You don't pre-activate.
Never
it.
pre-activate
Is this
yeast.
something particular the way you make bread? I've never heard of
Well, it's very similar to a recipe used in a bread machine.
I see.
That
okay.
they don't pre-activate it, and
Got it.
I've been doing it for years. It's never
Well,
failed.
it's got to be better than a bread machine bread, though, isn't it?
Oh, of course.
I mean, really.
Well, you know, I like-
I'm making butter out of scratch. You're making bread
Well,
from scratch.
I
It's
like-
got to be better than the regular.
I like all bread.
All
I
right.
think even people who buy the dough at Tops or Wegmans and come in and make it, the fact that they make it and share it is really the
Right.
whole idea. And sharing
Wonderful.
kindness
Sure.
is the whole idea.
Yes.
Very simple recipe. I teach this often. I'm going to take this dry ingredients and put it in my mixing bowl.
Okay.
I'll put this behind us for a moment.
Okay. Is everything all mixed in? The sugar and
everything
and
is
the
all
brown sugar?
mixed in.
The brown sugar?
Yes.
Well, how much did you put in there?
2 tablespoons of brown.
Okay. And how much? How many?
About a
packets of
tablespoon of
yeast?
yeast.
Okay.
And 2 teaspoons of salt.
Okay.
We mix it here. We'll move it to what we call a floured surface and do some kneading.
Okay.
I'll take bread to a senior center, and I'll make bread with 70, 80, and 90-year-old men and women who are struggling sometimes with cognition or memory, and I'll bake bread in their room, in their presence, and I'll tell you the memories just come pouring back. And it's a remarkable occurrence. It just fills me up with joy, and it also gives them a chance to love and to remember a loved one more time. It's a remarkable thing. And last year I did 180 presentations all over Western New York. I gave away 5,800 loaves of bread and drove about 12,000 miles. And I do it because it's just fun. And we both know that food has a way of uniting people, bringing them to the same plane, the same place, and it unites us. And I'm just continue to be intrigued.
This is almost like a religious experience.
You know, it is in a way. I'm a little humble about that. Of course, when you knead the dough,
Yes.
you want to make sure it's mixed thoroughly. It's kind of going through this transformation.
Right.
It almost resembles a loaf of bread already.
It does, absolutely.
And of course, it'll rise and double in size, and it's called proofing. And this is pretty much ready to go.
It does look like a stone almost. You know, there's a gospel passage where Jesus says, who would give your child a stone when they ask for a loaf of bread?
Okay.
And they say, the scripture scholars say, it's because, you know, a loaf of bread can look like a stone. It actually does, doesn't it?
Yes.
But when we're talking about God, am I doing this right?
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, there's no wrong way, except
Do you ever fold in?
you can do that.
Or is
What
that
you're
the wrong
doing
way?
is you're mixing and you're also capturing air.
Okay.
And everybody has their own way. In fact, I had a lady tell me once I was doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
At a senior center. She ran up to the table and took over the demonstration, and she said, "You're doing it all wrong, mister."
Really?
And I said, "Well, there might be more than one way." She says, "No, there's only one way. That's the way my mama made it." And she was so cute, and I think it's part of the memory we have of bread. Everybody, in fact, our generation had the experiences of someone in the family who made bread.
Sure.
And I have to tell you, it unites us. It unites all people, as you mentioned earlier. Grains are still the main sustenance.
You know, now it's getting real elasticy. Is that how you want
Yeah,
it?
yeah, we're almost done with that.
Okay.
It needs to double in size. And what I use a glass bowl, and I also use a little spray bottle to oil my bowl up. Now, I was at a...
This is a shampoo or a barber's bottle, isn't it?
Well, I was going to tell
Got
you...
little hot hair dryers and combs and brushes, things that I don't even have.
I have to tell you, I had a second grader tell me the same thing at St. Lawrence School, and she told me, she said, "Mr. Breadman, are you giving us a haircut too?" And I said, "No haircuts, but these are the best bottles for spraying oil."
Okay.
And when I'm making 25, 30 loaves, I need to work fast, and that's what we do. We let it rest. Dough
Okay.
always needs to rest. It'll
you
double
cover
in.
it?
I will cover it.
will
I don't
cover it?
always cover it though.
Do you put it in a warmer spot or anything or not?
Those are all traditions that are precious to people.
Okay.
I had people tell me they had a special room in their house when they made bread. I had one lady tell me, my mama said, when I make bread, you can't talk. And
That worked, huh?
I said, your mother was lying to you, but wasn't she clever?
Yeah. So we're going to we're going to cover this up, we're going to proof this, it's going to double in size, and we're going to be back with the finished product and some more on our daily bread right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to our Daily Bread, where I'm being visited today by the bread man, Chet Fery, and Chet has been working on some bread. In fact, the whole show today is dedicated to bread. It's a natural for our Daily Bread. That's our show. We never did a show all on bread before, but I'm glad we did. I'm glad we're learning more about it, and we're glad we're kind of thinking about ways in which food, and especially bread, brings back memories of perhaps people or days gone by. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to share real bread with someone. So let's take a look at this bread. This bread has risen.
Yes, we had it proof, double in size. The stage right now is we're going to shape it. We're going to put it on this pan, let it rise a little bit more, and then bake it.
Okay.
And what I want to do is we need a little flour, and this kneading process is not as intense as the first kneading process.
Okay.
In fact, what we're looking to do is press the air out of this dough.
Oh, can I try this?
Oh, you can do it. I had a lady tell me that when she used to do this phase, she used to whisper her husband's name.
Why?
Well, she was just thinking of him, and she says one day she was doing it, and he ran in from the backyard and said, "Are you calling me?" And she said, "I must have been yelling, not whispering." And I said, "Well, good thing your husband caught on to that quickly." So, what we want to do is we want to shape
I heard
it.
a little air come out of there.
Oh, you did. Good for you.
It made a little squeaky
Well, you
sound.
are
that's
you are
good.
a natural bread maker.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
So, what we want to do, we want to shape it into a long loaf.
Okay.
And I'm always conscious of what the bottom looks that becomes the top of the bread.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're shaping and trying to pinch the bottoms in, so the air stays tight.
Now, will this be a crispy bread loaf? Will
Oh,
it be
yes,
a
it
soft?
will.
Okay.
It'll rise. It'll have a nice long look to it.
Okay.
I'm going to put a little cornmeal so it doesn't stick. There are some bakers who would use oil. Yes. Some use even a silpat sheet or parchment paper.
Okay.
But I like the corn because it gives it a nice smell and it helps to add to the flavor of the bread. Now I'll put this right on here.
Terrific.
I also like to put a glaze on the bread. I have two here. I have a glaze that I use that's baking soda and water, about a 15-to-1 ratio of baking soda to water.
What does that do?
It helps brown the bread. So now what I'm going to do with this bread is I have another glaze that's mixed with milk and water.
Okay.
About a 50-50 ratio. And this will help brown the bread, gives it a nice color. I'm also going to score it. And I do that because the bread will burst one more time when it goes into the oven.
Okay.
And I like finishing my bread off with a cross because I normally have an intention in mind.
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking of someone. I'll put a little flour on just to give it a little color.
Okay.
And we'll let this sit for about 40 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And then we'll place it in the oven, 400 degrees, for about 30 minutes.
Okay.
And we'll have the bread we've been waiting for.
Beautiful.
To go with your
I
favorite
mean, you
butters.
talk about artisanal bread. You don't get
Yes.
much more artisanal than this, do you?
Well,
Unless you were going to grind your own wheat.
We could try that.
We could try that. That'll be the next
that'll
thing.
be
Right,
another
yeah,
show.
yeah. This is a beautiful, I mean, really a beautiful loaf of bread. There we go.
Okay.
And I got a specific, this is a bread knife. It's a little serrated, so it's
So that's
easier
what
to
you
cut.
need. Sure.
And this has really been
This
a
is the-
wonderful visit and a great time, and really brings a lot of what bread is. It brings it more of the reality of what it is. It's not just something you buy in a package in the store.
I've
You
never
can
had
make it
someone
yourself.
turn down a free loaf of bread, and
I'll bet.
and every time I give a loaf of bread away, someone smiles.
So this is the bread man, and he gives bread away, and people love it. And it reminds us that you can give something away too. It doesn't have to be bread, but it can be something that's a reminder of the past, brings us into the present, and gives us hope for the future of what we are and what we can become. And bread is really the bread of life. So we thank our Lord God for all of the gifts He gives us, for the bread man, and for you, and for all that you do, and all that you are, and that you enjoy the bread of life given to us by the Lord Jesus. So God bless us all. Oh, by the way, I was supposed to tell you, we're in a new kitchen here. It's been not very expensive. It's just been repainted cabinets. Just if you're looking at the background, this is a new kitchen we've got, and we're still working on it. It's under process. So if you notice that, fine. I didn't think anybody would notice it, but the producer said, you better tell them. So I'm telling you, it's new. It's a different color, that's all. I'm the same, and the guests are the same, and they're great guests. And thanks so much, Chet.
you.
You want to cut a piece of this bread for me?
Let's do it. Sure.
Thank you.
And I think
Oh,
you're
beautiful.
the heel of the bread kind of
I
guy.
am
aren't
the
you?
heel of the bread kind of a guy. How did you know that?
I just wild guess.
And don't forget to go to odbtv.org for our recipes for these and all of our shows.